Good afternoon, council members. My name is Julie Montgomery, and I am a member of Aura. It's not often I come before you guys with a new idea that I think everyone will probably like, but I think this might be one of them. Recently, I was doing some research to try to looking at building permits to try to figure out whether or not increases in density actually do lead to increases in or slow down price increases or not. Which is an interesting research project, but the thing I discovered while I was doing it is that the number of housing units affected by any given project is not actually usually recorded. The permit applications for new construction, whether it's residential or commercial or a demolition, that there's no one field that says how many housing units are involved in this. And this seems like a very simple thing we could fix just by adding it to these forms. There is a form for number of units on commercial construction, but it doesn't even specify like housing units. So sometimes if it's like a mixed use commercial development, you'll end up with some number that you're not sure whether it's office units or residential units or some combination of the two. So I think if we care about seeing whether or not all these initiatives make a difference, then we need to be measuring whether or not we're adding or removing housing units and where this is happening. So it's hopefully something we could just get done and be able to track this stuff a little better.
Thanks. Are you finished?
Yes.
I wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Thank you for that comment. I think that's really important because one of the metrics that I think would be very helpful in this discussion is when, particularly for demolitions or renovations, how many units were there initially, and then how many units do you end up with? Because as we talk about trying to find ways to increase the housing supply, which will address the demand that is greater than our housing supply now and will hopefully address the rapid appreciation in price of both rental prices and for sale prices. I think that information is very helpful. So
absolutely.
Are you also finding on the tail end of those permits not being able to match? So you don't have it initially knowing how many units would be taken away, but then do you have the data that shows how many units would be supplied or would be added or would be...
Yeah,
or you would end up with?
You can kind of try to match those up by the address, and you can do that sometimes, but it's not always really clear what matches up with what, and sometimes it's residential and sometimes it's commercial, because like a lot of times apartment complexes will have a commercial permit, so you kind of have to look across different data sets, and the housing units field is there on all of these records, but a lot of times it's the data's either missing or it's clearly wrong or it's just questionable. Like it might be clearly wrong if it says in the description a duplex, but then it'll say one housing unit, that sort of thing. And so this data could definitely be better tracked, and I think it would just take clarifying it on the forms and making sure that when Development Services approves these applications that they make sure it's filled in appropriately.
I think those are all really good suggestions. My office would be happy to work with you on that. So if you would reach out to us, I think that's really important information as we talk about ways that we can creatively, without charging more fees and more expenses to people that are providing housing, can actually make sure we're ending up with more housing, and having those metrics would be really important. So thank you. Thank you for your initial work on that.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.